Hey guys, Maven here. Now, by far one of the coolest things about being a WWE superstar, your own action figure. In this video, I'm going to be reviewing every action figure made of me during my time in the WWE. I'll tell you how an action figure gets made and how it gets to your local store ready for you to buy. And of course, you know I'm going to be talking about the financial benefits of having your own WWE action figure. Naturally, the only place to begin is to talk about my very first action figure, my figure from WrestleMania 18. I would receive this around the summer of 2002, and being that it was my very first, Jakks Pacific took care of me. They sent me a box of 50 of them that I could do what I wanted with. In fact, one of them ended up becoming my dog's favorite toy. He would run through the house with it in his mouth. I still remember the very first time I knew that my action figure was for sale. I went to my local Target knowing that it was on the shelf, and I wasn't disappointed. I get to the toy section, go around to the wrestler section, and there it was, lo and behold, for everyone to see. Well, they wouldn't be able to buy it because even though I had 50 of them in my house, I still wanted all the others. They had 8 on the shelf, so in my cart, all 8 of them went. So I go up to the register thinking, I'm gonna make this cashier's day. Obviously, she's gonna just be ecstatic to be in the presence of a real life pro wrestler, to be in the presence of someone with an action figure. So on the little conveyor belt, all 8 of them went. And as she scanned and as the thing beeped and as I'm standing there waiting, thinking in my mind, any moment now, it's gonna sink in. She's going to realize I'm in the presence of true greatness. Well, that never happened, and in fact, it got to the point to where I had to alert her to the fact. I had to be like, yeah, you see that guy? Yeah, that's me. And she couldn't care less. Immediately, I was humbled, and humbled in a way where I never would make that mistake again. To assume that not only someone knew who I was, but that they would care. So now, I'm gonna do something I haven't done in 23 years. I'm gonna actually open up one of these figures and I'm gonna show and go over how this handsome face gets put into action figure form. I haven't opened one of these toys up in years, so bear with me, and we're gonna go over it and I'm gonna point out all the details of the figure. It's a sin. Here goes its value. The moment you open one of these figures, you're in essence killing its value. So right now, I am actually reducing this figure's value from $8 to probably more like $3. I remember the one thing about these figures is just their packaging. You could tell a lot of time and thought went into how they packaged them. The packaging was done where you could not only see the figure itself, but all the little bells and whistles. So you had the belt, and as we take it out, oh man. I remember one time a co-worker of mine, looked up just to poke fun at me. He's like, let's see how much your figure's worth online. I remember it said somebody was selling my action figure online for $8. And I'll never forget, it said in the comments, slightly played with. Well, I don't know what that meant, but I didn't bid. So we got the Maven figure, and if you remember from my previous video during this time, this was when I was the hardcore champion. So obviously, any figure of WrestleMania 18 is going to have the hardcore title with it. So there you go. Goodness gracious. Figure comes with its own stand, tells you it's from WrestleMania 18. Stand, this is mantle ready right now for your home. I love the way they even add my nameplate, tells you I was the hardcore champion at this time. I know what you're saying though. Maven, how did they scan you? How did they get it to where you're making your trademark smirk. And how did they get the body dimensions, similar to what your body was at the time? Because this figure came out right as I had been signed, and I found myself in the world of performance enhancing drugs. I remember the day we were in LA and Devon told me, and I've mentioned in a video before, Jakks Pacific is going to find you at some point during this day. When they do, unless Vince himself is chewing your ear off, you go with them, because financially it's going to be in your best interest. And I'm gonna tell you later on how much I made in essence for this figure. I've went over it before, but it still blows my mind how much money I made for this. It's gonna shock you too if you have no clue. So, what was the process of going from this down to this? Well, let me grab my second figure and I'll tell you all about it. My second figure would be similar to my first, with the layout, with the body, with the smirk. The real true story of this second figure would be on the back. Now, this is when the show was split from Raw and SmackDown brands after the WWE changed from WWF to WWE. So we would have the first draft, and I love knowing that I'm in WWE history being a part of the very first draft ever. And here is the SmackDown draft, and there was a lot of debate backstage on who would go number one. Would it be The Rock? Would it be Maven? Well, I'm here to tell you Rock won out, and I don't know what he's been up to these days, but I hope he's been doing good for himself. I would find myself drafted 10th that night. And on the program, you see my surprise. Now, obviously, I knew that I was going to be drafted 10th, but that doesn't mean that my shock, the shock on my face that you see when they announced my name, was any less real. Oh, I was that surprised. And I think everyone else was surprised. Not surprised that I was going to be drafted 10th, but I was going to be drafted at all. I mean, I'm ahead of names like Chris Jericho. I'm ahead of, obviously, my tutor, the guy who taught me Al Snow. I'm ahead of Hurricane. Once I was a mainstay in WWE programming, once they knew I was going to be there for longer than a cup of coffee, once I had the hardcore title, obviously they couldn't fight it anymore. They're like, get him in the damn booth. Let's make him an action figure. My first time being in LA for a full day at the Staples Center, that's when Devon told me, I don't care, unless you're talking to Vince about something you're doing that night, you go with the Jakks Pacific people the moment they grab you. And that's exactly what I did. They came, they grabbed me, they took me, behind the back of the arena where they had their own truck set up, and inside these trucks, they had a big cylinder tube set up. Imagine almost like a stand-up tanning bed, something you stand in with cameras the whole 360 degrees around you, something that would capture every square inch of your body. So you better be in the shape that you want to be recorded in. And once you get in this booth, you're there for around 2 hours. I remember them telling me, what's your look? What's your persona? And all I had at the time was my smirk. So this smirk you see is the first and only thing that came to my mind when they said, Maven, what is your persona? But I was on cloud nine the whole time being in there. I knew that they were going to turn me into an action figure. I knew they were going to turn me into a video game from the work being done that day. But even then, I had no clue it was going to turn out as cool as this. Life was a whirlwind at this time. 2 years prior, I was a 6th grade school teacher, high school baseball coach, and now I was not only the hardcore champion, but I was drafted 10th to the SmackDown brand and had my second action figure out. Would that be the last one? It wouldn't be. But would they keep my same body style? You're about to find out. It's a little bit painful to see $8 go to $3 this quickly, but I do it for you, YouTube. One of the surprises once you open your official draft night Maven action figure is the surprise inside of the draft night contract. Now, I did not sign this. They never asked for my signature, and I actually wish they would have, because that is not how I would have signed it. But it's an action figure. So along with the action figure, you get your WWE Draft contract number 10 in the limited edition. I think there's only 15,000 of these available, and I have probably somewhere in my life had about 3,000 of them. So here we go. Time to let little Maven out. Just like with the first figure, they kept the same build on figure number 2. They kept the same smirk. The one thing it is missing is the Hardcore Championship. Now, I know I got drafted number 10 because I, at the time, was the Hardcore Champion. So I'm a little bit shocked they didn't put it in there, but beggars can't be choosers. I'm happy it exists anyway. One thing I am happy is they got my eyebrows after Stephanie had got a hold to me and told me to do something about them. So I am immortalized in the action figure world with sensible eyebrows, and that I am happy about. With my career on SmackDown being halted abruptly after I broke my leg, I would come back and find myself on the Raw brand. And being on a new brand meant a new action figure. And the amazing part about this figure was it came with a new build, a build that I would like to think more closely represented what my body looked like back then. Now that's probably wishful thinking, and I probably didn't look that much better, but hey, 20 some years later, you don't know that, you don't remember that, but it's gonna look like this forever, and I love it. Now, one thing I forgot to mention was the reason Devon sent me with the Jakks Pacific people, and it wasn't to stroke my ego. They still had to pay for my rights, and blows my mind to this day. Right there, 30 grand would be what I made to get my rights to have an action figure out. And I've actually talked to other guys from my generation, and some guys actually made more than I did, but I didn't care. 30 grand, that was a great payday and a lump sum payday just to have my rights so we could have more good-looking men like this gracing the toy aisle. But just like the other two guys, this poor guy, he's been in here locked up for over 20 years. Time to give him his reprieve. Out of the box he comes. And the one thing about this newer figure is he would actually come with a usable trash can lid as the Hardcore Champion. And if you remember my video with The Undertaker, you saw me using the trash can lid on the dead man. And if you notice, it doesn't come with the stand, but he stands all on his own. If you notice, this figure was had a little bit more muscularity than this figure, and that would coincide with the time I found myself dabbling with some sports enhancers. So good on you, Jakks Pacific. Great attention to detail. I'm glad you didn't miss all the hard work and trips to my doctor that I was putting in during that time. They made my ass bigger. They made my ass bigger on that one too, which was accurate. Look, they did make my ass bigger. Yeah. Hey, what are you looking at? Now, the next figure we go into was actually our most difficult figure to track down. It took us by far longer than all of the other ones combined to get this one. And the main thing I noticed from the Off the Ropes figure was the fact that I had listened to Jeff Hardy. In a previous video, I talked about how Jeff educated me, schooled me on the fact that once you start changing your look, they will start putting more figures out in your new attire, which means more money down the line. And on the Off the Ropes figure, you see that I am wearing my green trunks. Now, during this time, after Jeff told me that, I realized I could wear way more colors than just the traditional black that I had been wearing. I had blue, green, yellow, fuchsia, pink, red. I had as many trunk color combinations that I could find made. And I would always match the color of my trunks to the color of the wrist tapes. And a lot of times I made sure that before they started a color, I could find the wrist tape color, just because I knew it was just going to be something extra to add. Jakks Pacific made sure they added my green wrist tape. Again, Jakks Pacific's small, minute attention to detail is what's made them the best company for wrestling action figure. Not only did they get the color of my wrist tape matching the color of my trunks, but they also recognized that during this time, the WWE gave me more opportunities on the microphone. I was able to speak a little bit more moving forward, and lo and behold, this figure came with a microphone because, hell, if I'm gonna run my mouth out there, they know anyone that's getting this figure might have me running my mouth in their home. Like the other ones, he's been cooped up far too long. Time to let him breathe. Like the other figures we went by, Jakks Pacific made sure that as my body developed, as I trained more, as I grew, as I got bigger, they reflected that in my figure. And not only adding the microphone, but the removable elbow and knee pads, the small little touches is what makes these figures so collectible and what makes them just so cool to have. If you notice the M on my front and on that luscious booty, if you notice the coloring, well, that's actually the color that Maven was written on my booty and on my front side. Jakks Pacific stopped at nothing with making these as accurate, as real as they could, and my hat's off to them. Now, the next figure that would come out switched up things, and they did this because things were switching up within my career as well. And you might be asking, why are you in a 2-pack with Eugene? I'll get to that in a minute, but first, what were the differences within my career? Well, the main difference was during this time, I changed from being a babyface, a good guy, to a heel, a bad guy. And when that transformation changed, everything about my career changed. And on a side note, I really started having a lot more fun. And to this day, I enjoy being a heel umpteen times more than I enjoy being a babyface. Now, the character of Eugene, it's a little bit complicated, so I'm not gonna go into the reasoning why. And in fact, Eugene, Nick Dinsmore, has done a great job explaining it on his channel. And I encourage everyone to check it out, and he'll tell you why after you finish this video. But he was the perfect person for me to transform to a heel. Once I became a heel, I loved it. I had so much fun. Once I learned how to work as a heel. When you become a heel, it's completely different. Your responsibilities in the ring changes. The way that you sell changes. The way that you lead a match changes. The way that you finish a match changes. It's something that people normally learn on the indies, and they get a seasoning time period. Well, me, I was thrown into the mix. I was thrown to the wolves. The fact that I was doing this learning on the fly is why one of the agents or producers, Dean Malenko, why, to put it bluntly, he didn't give a rat's ass about me, and I've mentioned that in a previous video. I am happy though that the first person I would find myself in the ring with was someone as seasoned as Nick Dinsmore or Eugene. So it only stands to reason that they would immortalize us in a 2-pack. Now, I know what you're saying, Maven, why the hell would they put you in a 2-pack? Easy answer. Neither of us were probably successful enough to sell our own individual action figures during this time. So the way to monetize, the way to get the most bang for their buck was to put us together. Nick and I never found ourselves tangled together in WrestleMania 21, so I have no clue as to why they put us together in this 2-pack. But hell, it's time both guys get a chance to breathe. You both ready? Getting into these figures, I don't know enough about Eugene's attire to know if it's accurate or not, but I do know one thing Jakks Pacific did with me that shocks me. On my right arm, they have white on there. Why is this? Well, during a match, I actually unceremoniously cut my elbow and found that it would not heal. After 2 rounds of pretty heavy antibiotics, it would just continue to balloon up. Now at this time, I already had both of my bursa sacs gone in both of my elbows. So I don't know why my infection would not go away. It got to the point where the doctor told me after my 2nd round of a very strong antibiotic, if this round does not work, I was going to have to wear a belt that had an IV running antibiotics to me 24 hours a day. But once I heard that, I made sure for a while that I had my elbow wrapped because I didn't want anything to get inside that injury and compromise. I wanted this injury to heal. So for a while, I would have my elbow wrapped pretty tight, just trying to protect it, just trying to heal an injury. Jakks Pacific caught that and put it on there. I've been asked before, that's the answer. This figure is also different because you see the WrestleMania 21 t-shirt. What was great about every time we would have a pay-per-view, an overseas event, anything that the WWE was trying to promote, we would always get shirts, and they would have as many as we wanted backstage, and guys would get them, cut them up, maybe use them in a promo. Some guys would use them in a match. Even if they had a backstage segment and there was a pay-per-view coming up that you wanted to start advertising. For the longest time, I had bins of shirts in my house. And even to this day, I still have some old pay-per-view shirts. And it's pretty cool whenever I come across them and see, well, yeah, that was Rock versus Brock. I remember that SummerSlam. So that's the reason that they had me in a shirt on this action figure. And it was just an opportunity just to do something a little bit different. They were using the same build as other figures. They were using the same green trunks. They were doing the same thing with the removable knee pads, the removable elbow pads, but they hadn't put me in a shirt yet. This was a great opportunity to do so. My next figure that would come out would be based on my first pay-per-view as a heel. And it would be New Year's Revolution from 2005. In this pay-per-view, I would find myself against Shelton Benjamin, and it was in Puerto Rico, and I can still remember that Puerto Rican crowd and how much they hated me when I told them, "Calle sus bocas." And I remember them telling me that means shut your mouth. When you're telling them to shut their mouth, that's pretty disrespectful, so they're not gonna like you too much. And it was one of the nights that still, when I think back, I think on very fondly as to one of my best nights in the wrestling business. So I'm happy that that night was immortalized in this action figure. And if you go back and you look at that pay-per-view, the blue trunks is exactly what I was wearing. So once again, well done, Jakks Pacific, and your attention to detail. He doesn't want to come out. There we go. What makes me truly take my hats off to Jakks Pacific with this one is the chair. And during this pay-per-view, I went off script a bit. Didn't do it on my own. I was told to cut a promo on an extremely hostile Puerto Rico. So that's exactly what I did. And I would go around the corner and I would find myself a chair. I would firmly plant it, and on it I would stand. And we're gonna use a prop from an earlier review, and I'm gonna actually put the microphone in my hand because that's exactly what I did that night. And to a raucous San Juan, Puerto Rico, I would cut a promo that to this day, I can still look back and be extremely proud of. That's why, Jakks Pacific, my hat's, again, going off to you. The fact that you put this chair in this pack, I'm not sure if it was an accident. If so, happy accident, but it fits this action figure to perfection. My last action figure, just like my first one, would be based off of my appearance at WrestleMania. This time, WrestleMania 21. And as an ode to my first action figures, they would go back to me being in the black trunks. And although I was wearing the colors at this time, occasionally I would find myself wearing the black. So having me in the black trunks would become a good throwback and actually a good action figure for me to end my career in the WWE on. But just like all the other Little Mavens, this Little Maven deserves the chance to breathe as well, so that's exactly what we're gonna do. And in true throwback form, they decided to have me with the Hardcore Championship with my last action figure. Do wrestlers get to choose with the accessories they come with? I can't speak for the top tier guys, but I never got a chance. They never asked me, do you want a belt, a microphone, a chair? Do you want a trash can lid? It was whatever they thought was the best fit for each figure. I had no say in it. All I could do was be happy that they were putting a new one out of me. Obviously, when this guy came out, Jakks Pacific didn't know that I would soon be released, but nonetheless, this figure came out anyway, and this would be immortalized as the last figure that ever was made of me during my time in the WWE. So here it is, every Maven action figure from beginning to end. And I mentioned earlier about the $30K I made for my very first action figure, but I would receive a royalty payment with each and every figure. And although I can't remember how much those payments were today, I can sure as shit tell you I wish I was still getting them, because action figures was one of the easiest, one of the best ways to increase your earning potential and make sure that royalty check was through the roof. And hell, since he was my two-pack partner and I'm a nice guy, make sure you check out Nick Dinsmore's channel, Eugene Behind the Scenes, where he talks all about his run in the WWE, and check out the video on screen where he talks about his controversial WWE character.